Mata ki jai. And focus on that. So welcome for the chanting and discourse. I'm going to take off my mask so people can actually hear me. What do you think we're going to start with? Jai Ganesh? Do you remember what number it is in the book?
12.
Great, thank you. And today is Wednesday and it's Ganesh Day. That was perfect.
I think we can
Anandama. What number is this, sweetheart?
12.
12. Okay. Shema Mata Ki Jai, Nanda Mata Ki Jai, Vishweshwari Mata Ki Jai, Bole Baba Ki Jai. People go, yes, what did you want? I'm having a hard time.
33.
Which number?
33.
What is that?
I think that's when we did it one time.
33, Ganesh Arti?
Yeah.
Well, we already sang that. We sang the chorus to it because it's much easier. I was thinking we'd go right to the discourse today. You up for listening about
Yeah.
Sukadeva going? He traveled for 1 year, not driving, walking. So that's a long walk. I think it might be similar to if you tried to walk from California to New York. Not sure how long it would take, but it took Sukadeva 1 year to walk across India to go find King Janaka in his kingdom. So let's read about that, okay? Does anybody have a sense of how long it would take to walk across the United States?
10 years.
Maybe, it depends on how many times you stopped, I guess. Anyways, I was thinking about that last night as I read the story. How long would it take us to walk that far? So this is a book about the Divine Mother that we read each day during the Navratri festival, because these are 9 days honoring the Divine Mother. So we left yesterday, I believe, just as Vedavyasa had asked his son Sukadeva to get married. Sukadeva was not excited about that at all. As a matter of fact, he was quite adamant that he just wanted to go into the woods and be a monk in the woods and go right into heaven. And so his father said, well, why don't you study this book, the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, of which this is a condensed version by Ramesh Menon that I often read from. So his father murmured, you had best study the Bhagavatam Purana. And then he goes on to read about or share it. Once at the end of a kalpa, when the universe lay dissolved, Vishnu lay upon the ocean of eternity as a small child. He lay on a floating peepal leaf and wondered, who has created me, a child? Who am I? A voice spoke to him from the sky and said, all that I see is I myself. Only I am eternal. So this is the Divine Mother speaking to him. The child wondered who spoke. Vishnu, the child, began to chant that mantra the voice had spoken. All that I see is myself. Only I am eternal. So that means that the only thing all around us is really all the divine. And we think it's individualized, but it's really all the Divine Mother. And so that's what she's telling him. Suddenly, the Devi Bhagavati appeared before him as Mahalakshmi. Vishnu was astonished to see the exquisite goddess standing on the water at his side. He saw her Shaktis around her, Rati, Bhuti, Buddhi, Mati, Kirti, Smirti, Driti, Shraddha, Meda, Svada, Swaha, Nidra, Daya, Kati, Tushti, and many others. All the Devis wielded divine weapons and had dazzling forms. They wore wonderful raiments and were adorned with unearthly ornaments. Vishnu was perplexed. Where had these women appeared from? Who was he that lay on this little peepal tree, on a peepal leaf on an endless sea? Is the Devi my mother? Wondered Vishnu, or some sorceress? Why has she appeared here now? Lakshmi Devi smiled at the infant Vishnu and said, have you forgotten me, my lord? But there have been countless pralayas, which are the end of the worlds, before this one, and countless times you have lain exactly thus on this leaf, and I appeared as I am now before you. You have forgotten. When you and I are one, Brahma will be born again from the lotus that grows from your navel. He will sit in Dhyan for 1,000 lotus counts of years, and then begin to create the world. First, he will emit the 3 realms, Swarga, Bhumi, and Patala. Then he will make the 5 elements and the universe from that. You, Vishnu, will preserve the universe. And then Shiva will leap from Brahma's brow, howling. After fervent tapasya and meditation, Shiva is given the Samhara Shakti with which he destroys the universe when another kalpa ends. I've come so we can begin this new kalpa, which is like a whole new creation that lasts for millions of years. Take me unto yourself to be your Vaishnavi Shakti. Vishnu said, beautiful one, who spoke that mantra I heard earlier? I'm obsessed with the need to know, even as a poor man is obsessed with wealth. Lakshmi Devi answered him, it was the Adi Shakti, the cause of all causes, that spoke to you. The mother must be very pleased with you that she taught you the mantra that is the seed of the Puranas. Cherish that mantra in your heart like your own life. It was at this point that Brahma arrived in terror of Madhu and Kaitava, and Vishnu slew those demons. Then Vishnu began once more to murmur the mantra the Devi had given to him. Brahma was astonished and asked, whom do you worship, Vishnu? You who are the highest God. Vishnu replied, the Adi Shakti, the Divine Mother, the Devi upon whom the sea rests, who is the source and mine as well. Who is your source and mine as well. This mantra is the bija of the Devi Purana, which will come to be as the kalpa unfolds. As Brahma sat in his golden lotus, he too began to recite the Devi's bij mantra. Later, Brahma taught that mantra to his son Narada, who taught it to me, Vedavyasa. It is from the secret fathomless mantra that I have wrought the mystic Devi Bhagavatam that we are reading now. Imbibe this Purana, and darkness will leave your heart as a sun of wisdom will rise, and a sun of wisdom will rise over your life. Thus Vedavyasa's son Sukadeva came to study the 18,000 slokas that are the Devi Bhagavatam. He committed the Purana to memory. Why, he even taught it to some disciples like me. But Sukadeva himself was not satisfied. Vedavyasa saw his son disconsolate and asked him, my child, why are you so full of care, like a man who is deep in debt? It seems your heart gives you no peace, and nothing I say can change that. Now in the city of Mithila lives a king who is also an enlightened Muni. His name is King Janaka. Go to him, Sukadeva. He will deliver you from your confusion, for he is an enlightened being, a Jivan Mukta, even while he's alive. Suka cried, incredible! He's a king, father, who rules a kingdom? How can Janaka be enlightened? It is like darkness and light existing in the same place. But I must go and see for myself. Give me leave. Sukadeva prostrated himself at his father's feet. With tears in his eyes, Vedavyasa raised up his son and embraced him. He said, go then, if you must, but swear you will return to me when you have seen King Janaka, and then remain with me always. Ah, son, you are the light of my light. How will I live if I don't see you again? Thus Sukadeva set out from his father's ashram for Matila and the King Janaki's city. So said Sutta in the Namisa Vana, where all the munis hung on his every word, as if his Purana was their very soul. So remember, Sutta is telling this story to all the munis. Okay, so now he's walking. Remember, it's going to take him 1 whole year to walk from his father's ashram in one part of India all the way to Matila, where King Janaka is. So, wandering at the marvelous world that unfolded before him as he walked along, Sukadeva made for Matila, which was a long way from his father's ashram. It was another practical education for this brilliant young man. He passed over white mountains and came down into jade plains. He forded great blue rivers and crossed many climes and kingdoms. He encountered all manners of men on his way, from every occupation and every walk of life. He passed through deep jungles where he saw only rishis who lived in meditation and tapasya. Among these, he saw men that worship Shiva and Shakti, Ganesh and Surya, Indra, Vishnu, and many other gods as well. After a whole year, Sukadeva arrived at the gates of King Janaka's kingdom in Matila. He saw how magnificent was the city before him and how contented its people seemed to be. But a huge guard stopped him at the gates and asked rudely, "Who are you, stranger? What brings you to Matila?" Sukadeva was astonished and made no reply, but he smiled to himself. The guard said sternly, "By King Janaka's command, no one may enter this city without declaring himself properly. You may not pass." Now Suka began to laugh softly. He said, "I have crossed Mount Meru and the Himalayas, countless jungles, rivers, and kingdoms to come here. And now I see how I was deluded, and it was my own father who has deceived me. The karma of other births made me walk all this long way here, and now I cannot even see King Janaka. Matila is no special place or holy place, nor does any Vedas personified live here to warrant my having taken such pains to come to this city." As Sukadeva spoke, the traveler's dust seemed to fall away from his body, and the guard saw that his skin shone like a god's. The man relented. He said, "Brahmana, forgive me if I've offended you. You may enter, for I see you are a blessed soul." "There's nothing to forgive. You merely did your duty. And how could you tell that I was not a thief or an enemy?" Sukadeva went into Matila and saw a bustling city full of people, all vigorously plying their various trades. He wandered the streets a while in mild amusement at the frenetic energy around him, all born of attachment. He saw men bargaining, arguing, some even coming to blows, and none of them seemed to realize what they did, nor how far from contentment they were. After a time, Sukadeva came to Janaka's palace. Here also a guard barred his way. Suka shut his eyes and stood still as stone before the swarthy fellow. The guard saw in alarm that the stranger's body began to shine with uncanny light, as Vedavyas's sun was plunged in meditation. Bright as a sliver of the sun shone Sukadeva, and in a moment a minister ran out of Janaka's palace and ushered the Muni past the awestruck guard and into the king's palace. The king's woman received him, and when they saw how illustrious he was and how young and handsome, their hearts were all aflutter. But Sukadeva was beyond the temptation of this, and they fed him with rare delicacies on which he nibbled politely, then showed him an elegant apartment with a bed of swan's down was made up for him. They fluffed up his pillows, but lingered in the chamber, but they were very much interested in him. Smiling, the serene Sukha washed his feet carefully. He slipped the ascetic's ring of couscous on his finger and then sat on the floor at the foot of the bed in Padasana, shut his eyes, and was lost in meditation again. The woman saw how candescently his body began to blaze, and growing afraid, they left him alone. Sukha meditated on the Supreme Brahman for 3 hours, then rose and slept for 6 hours. He awoke in the last part of the night and sat in dhyan again for another 3 hours. Came the morning, the hour just before sunrise, and Sukha bathed in cold water while the rest of the Matila slept, and yet again he sat meditating. Later the morning, King Janaka came to meet Sukha. The king came with his court priests and with Agya and Padya for the guests. When they had greeted each other formally, Janaka said, "Holy One, I see you are free of desire. Why has a rishi like you sought me out?" Sukadeva replied, "My father, Vedavyasa, said to me, 'Child, take a wife, because the family life is the best stage of life. But I believe that marriage is bondage and want no part of it.' Vedavyasa said that being married, one could still be detached. He sent me to you, saying that you ruled a kingdom and were yet detached and a jiva mukti. My lord, I want moksha. I want enlightenment, and nothing but moksha will satisfy me." King Janaka said, "Moksha is hard to attain. A man must first experience the 4 stages of life. First, you're a student, and then you're a householder with a family, and then you take renunciation, where you give up everything, and finally you become an ascetic before he can come to freedom. No man who has not experienced all these different stages of life can become a sannyasin." Sukha said, "But if a man has Vyagra detachment and is detached even before he lives through these different stages of life, can't he become a sannyas straight away?" Janaka said gravely, "You are my guru's son, and I tell you the truth. If a man enters sannyas with his desires unfulfilled, they are liable to waylay him without warning. He who makes his bed on a cliff can fall to his death, but the man who sleeps on flat ground is in no such danger. Desire is powerful. A man never relinquishes his cravings. The only way to free oneself of desire is the slow and gradual path prescribed of in the Vedas." The king smiled, and Sukadeva saw how full of grace he was. King Janaka said softly, "Sinless one, look at me. I live in the world in the thick of every activity. Yet nothing binds my spirit, and I am a free man. Bright youth, this world of illusion cannot deceive the soul. When the heart is pure and calm, then all the world is untainted and tranquil. The enemy is not outside. Every demon lives in one's own heart. The mind binds a man, not his circumstances. The Atman is beyond everything the mind perceives. The Atman can never be bound. When the mind sees the eternal everywhere and sees the divine everywhere, then the mind becomes free. The wise man experiences the 4 ashrams of life so that he can cleanse his mind until it grows still and he sees the truth that is immanent. But how will the mind recognize the truth when it is found, unless it has first known the world of illusion and despair?" Sukadeva was doubtful. He said, "My lord, the mere mention of a lamp in a dark room does not dispel its darkness. A householder lives in the thick of the deluded and violent night of samsara. How can he be free? When you are a king, O Janaka, and enjoy the wealth and power of a kingdom, how can you be a jivan mukta, an enlightened man? Don't you think of this great Matila as being your own? Don't you make a difference between pleasure and pain, the garland of a flower and the garland of a serpent? But the true mukti is beyond every attachment. I fear it is royal vanity that makes you think of yourself as being enlightened. Why, even ascetic munis who subsist on roots and fruits of the earth fall prey to this world's maya. King Janaka smiled tolerantly at this young man. He said, "You speak cleverly, Sukadeva, but the truth is that you are full of doubt and anxiety. Why, I am not. I have no doubt that I am free. And not your cleverest arguments can change that. Remember that it is you who have journeyed all this way here to seek the peace of your heart. I, Sukha, am already at peace, and I stay here in my kingdom with no desire. Do you think that if you live in the heart of a forest, you will be free of the doubts that torment you? Why, the jungle is full of bondage as my Matila. The Vana is made of 5 elements as much as this city. How will you be any freer in the Vana than anywhere else? Freedom is of the spirit, and the spirit can be free anywhere or bound anywhere. Moksha is within you. Indeed, you imagine to be a less conducive circumstance to attain moksha. Indeed, what you imagine to be a less conducive circumstance to attain moksha or enlightenment may well be the very one that sets you free. Perhaps because the time had come, Sukha suddenly felt his doubts melt away. Janaka had said nothing to him that his guru Brihaspati and Vedavyasa, his father, had not said to him, yet the manner in which the Lord of Matila argued, and most of all, his cheerful detachment, struck a deep chord in Sukadeva's heart. Vedavyasa's son felt like a man who had set down a great burden that he had hardly aware he had been carrying. He smiled radiantly at Janaka and said with feeling, "Sadhu, sadhu." Sukha prostrated himself before the king, took the dust from his feet, and walked out of Matila feeling happier than he had for a long time. When his father Vedavyasa saw him, he ran out of his ashram in delight. When his son returned, he clasped Sukha in his arms and covered his face with kisses. Sukha stayed with his father, and Vedavyasa saw that a profound transformation had come over his child. The youth was at peace now and quietly pursued his studies of the Dharma Shastras. He did not argue with his father anymore, but seemed content to learn from him with a tranquil spirit. And when Sukha sat in meditation, he saw King Janaka's serene, smiling face before him, and this filled him with untold peace. After some weeks, Vedavyasa cautiously broached the subject of marriage to his son. Sukadeva smiled and said, "As you wish, father. If it will make you happy, I'm happy to enter this ashram of family life." Vedavyasa was overjoyed. Sukha was married to a chaste girl called Prabhari, who was also a rishi's daughter. She was a devoted wife, and together they had 4 sons and 1 lovely daughter. And Vedavyasa watched his son's family in quiet delight, and Sukha was so happy that if he ever looked back to the time when he had stubbornly refused to marry, he would laugh to himself that he had been so afraid and foolish. Jai Mahamaya ki Jai. What do you think? Any questions? But can you take your mask off and talk really loud? Because with the mask. Yes. I agree. Anybody else have a question while she's formulating her?
My question was, why exactly did he not listen to his father the first time he asked him to do things?
Why did he not listen to his father the first time he asked him to be married?
Yeah.
Because he thought he could just walk into the forest and be a yogi sitting there and never have to do anything else except think about the divine. And what his father was trying to say is that it's important, at least in India, in this tradition, that people do all the different stages. So first he was a student, then the next thing is to get married and have a family, and you learn so much from, ask your mommy if she's learning more as she's a mother. And then Elaine can answer if you learn even more as you're a grandmother or grandfather. And so you keep learning and learning, and you get more patient and more understanding.
And then you're a yogi.
Then as you get older and you turn over everything to your children and your grandchildren, then you can go into the forest and, yes, let go of everything and then go into sannyas, into a yogi. Perfect.
You can either do nothing.
But he didn't really believe that. But when he saw King Janaka, who was very peaceful and happy, and yet he was ruling the whole kingdom, he realized that, yes, you can learn more and more about being a yogi, even though you're busy doing your family life and your job. Isn't that cool? May we all learn that we can all do our work. So right now, you two young ladies are in the student. They call it ashram, the student part of your life. So as you do your student, realize that that's part of your life, and you get to learn from being a student.
I lost my tooth.
What? And you lost your tooth last night. That's part of being a student sometimes, is losing your tooth and many other things. So we're going to go up and just say hello to Mother and Baba, and here's our little Devi altar. You see Mother and Baba are both in green today, honoring Ganesh. And thank you for joining us. And once again, may all of our prayers and love fill our hearts so we can go bring it to the whole world, bring more peace and love. We'll tune in again tomorrow at 11 for the fire ceremony. Bole Baba Ki Jai.